Hello, and thanks for joining us for another one of our webinars. My name is Victoria Procunier. I am the group publisher at Fifth Story. And one of the reasons to have the webinar today is we know a lot of people are looking at 2025 for their plans. And from our clients and network, we're looking for the latest stats and information as to why to choose earned media for their outreach when there are a lot of different options. And my sort of tongue-in-cheek, it's a gift that keeps giving, is really just to talk about how it's still a very relevant way, the news media to reach Canadians. And I recognize that in those pitches that you need information to support that. And so what I've done today is gather that information for you with also a little bit of an update as to what we're doing here at Fistori and how we might be able to help you in the new year. I anticipate this will probably take about 30, 35 minutes, and so some time for questions after. If you don't mind popping your question into the chat, I have my team here that have joined me, our account managers and our media relations director, Asma, and they can definitely follow up with you afterwards for more specifics. While I will talk a little bit about our services, I'm not going to go too in depth. The main part of this really is to talk about more information about what we're hearing from the media. And about that too is a general sort of overview, trends and footprints here in Canada, as well as we're currently running our media survey, and we already have quite a big response. So we have seen some highlights that I wanted to share. And at the end, we're just going to talk a little about what we're doing over at Fifth Story in terms of earned media and digital outreach. And to get into who we are, if you're not familiar with us, we've actually been in the business of earned media content as a publisher for over 40 years. We are News Canada to the media and then Fifth Story to our clients. And over that time period, we've worked with pretty much everybody, be it the federal government to nonprofits like the Arthritis Society, Kidney Foundation, big box brands like Home Depot, as well as we work with PR agencies like Strategic Objectives to Edelman. And in terms of the media network, we have a network here in Canada as well as in the US. In Canada, we provide published content for print online with articles, video, as well as on radio. And in the US, we do an article service for pickup. With all of our services, we have a benchmark reach guarantee, and we provide proof of performance in our media measurement analysis service media rating point system. And looking at our network here in Canada, I'll touch a little bit on the US later. We have an English and French network. We do have regional coverage as well with Western Canada, Ontario, and Quebec. And we have pickup with both the big entities like Postmedia, Black Press. Metroland still has some publications in print, as well as I'll be talking a little bit more about Village Media, which has quite a great story here in Ontario and quite a big presence. And we also get pickup in some of the free publications like For Rent, Reno Decor, Curb Appeal. And within that, even though we distribute in English and French, we actually have media that will translate our content or run it in a bilingual. We'll have an English and French publication, but maybe English and Punjabi. And so we get pickup in those specialty publications, as well as those that are targeting specific communities like the Caribbean, Southeast Asia, and Indigenous. And we also get pickup and requests for special sections. And one of the biggest ones is seniors and 55 plus focus. So our experience is coming from media across the board. And that really is still print dailies, community papers is probably what we're known for. Magazines, broadcast. While we used to be in television, we now focus on radio, and our digital presence is on websites, e-editions, blogs, personal or business, social media, and e-newsletters. And just to give you a sample of the amount of coverage that we're seeing come through and where this data comes from is in last year, we would have processed about 31,000 clips between print, online, and broadcast. We also have our own consumer brand, which is For Your Life, as well as publishing partnerships with MSN for English and French content. And again, just to understand how we work with the media as a content publishers within that network, they're expecting ready to use content from us. And that's either to run special sections that they have features from us. We usually complement their feature editorial, as I've sort of depicted if you are just looking at the layout of a publication. Again, if they have regular segments on radio that they're looking to fill by us, or if they have a need, something drops out in programming, they come to newscanada.com to fill all those gaps, and there's no cost for them to use that content. And how we work with consumers is we've had the For Your Life brand since 2008, and it's had various iterations. It was once a TV show, and now it's actually been rebranded in 2023 as a consumer website. So all the content we distribute to media is also published on our consumer site. And because of the volume of content as a publisher, it actually enabled us to uh, basically go through the application process of becoming a publishing partner with MSN uh, in terms of earlier this year, actually in 2024. We were approved for 2 channels there, as you see on MSN, both for our English and French content when it comes to videos as well as articles. And one really unique feature about MSN is while we distribute our content to media without any markup or HTML, we're actually able to hyperlink any call to action in the content of MSN, which is created an editorial backlink. And what clients are telling us now when they look at their reach results in Google, they're seeing that that's contributing to people coming back to their website as it's prioritized differently as an organic backlink to their site. And MSN, if you run on a Microsoft desktop, you'll see in that little corner that with a little block, blue block there, I run on Microsoft myself, that they feature MSN's news content there as well as on the website and on their mobile app. And to help determine the impact of that coverage, for anyone that uses our MRP service, they'll know that we get our data from ComScore, which is the leading provider of online metrics, and we're able to tell you what the Canadian audience is for that in terms of we can actually get down into the channel for pickup. And the other unique feature, we're always looking to share as much insights to help craft content. And MSN, because we are a publisher, we're able to actually see how the content is performing in real time. So in addition to the metrics of pickup from various sources that we report on, now we're actually able to see in real time who's going to the content as it's promoted by MSN on their platform. So now to shift into a little bit more about the Canadian media landscape and the trends and overview of what we're seeing for the past year that leads into what's going to shape the year to come. And digital dominance is definitely something that we're seeing a shift for. I would say, and I'm going to show some stats about the actual printed publications. In the US, there definitely has early on a shift to digital, and that's one of the main ways that people get their information, and it's definitely where we're headed. And especially when I talk about Village Media, that was a digital first publication. But the important thing to know is that while people are going online to get the information, for us, particularly with the news media, it is interesting to see, and I've cited various sources that you can read further into this, that News Media Canada found that 97% were actually going to the media outlets directly for that content. As you'll know that with social media, obviously people have migrated away from Facebook. You're not, again, with the Bill C-18 wasn't resolved, so content is not being promoted. And so they have basically changed the platforms as to where they're getting their information. And as mentioned, going directly to the news sites for that content. And if you haven't looked at Village Media, I definitely would. Like, I follow the CEO here, and he recently posted this that they're a good news story. So where there's been a lot of closures, we've seen Village Media Ontario, and I'm sure they're going to expand their reach from here, have actually created these hyper-localized sites like Timmins Today, Oakville, and now they have Toronto Today. So they have 29 local sites where you can get content. And as you can see here from the post, that they are growing. Over 100 of their staff now are in newsrooms. So a great news story that we follow, and they're regular users of our content also. And something that we see continuing again, seeing the again support for local journalism. So that has continued in 2024, committing 10 million over 3 years, starting this year to next. So again, just keeping the livelihood of the news media going into the future. And so, what is the actual footprint if you're looking at numbers to commit behind this presence? And again, more information, I highly recommend News Media Canada. I'll probably send this in the follow-up note. There's certain newsletters I would definitely subscribe to if you're not already. I think there was a great publication that captured Media Digest, but it stopped publication in, I think, 2017. But there still are industry associations like News Media Canada that represents the paper, the dailies, as well as the community papers, Radio Connects, even the CRTC, that I'll recommend following to get the latest Canadian data. And probably this is the most surprising stat when we talk about news in Canada, that there's still 28 million newspapers that are distributed across the country every week. So it's still a touch point for reaching Canadians. And how that divides out is half of those are the daily newspapers, and then the other half of that is the community newspapers, with 13 million community newspapers being circulated every week. And the interesting stat there too is that access. And so community newspapers, a majority are free, whereas dailies are paid. And again, combining the stat from News Media Canada as well as a report from the CRTC that are finding 81% of Canadians are reading newspapers weekly in traditional or online formats. And that CRTC found that that was increasing. And so while it might not be the printed publication, they're accessing on their mobile devices or on the website directly, but it's still a majority of Canadians that are being reached by newspapers. And then another very big question we have is, who is it that's actually reading these newspapers? And again, News Media Canada looked into that, and I think sort of myth busting that again, it's not necessarily an older demographic does still read the newspapers, but when it comes to looking at them online, there still is a strong readership between those aged 22 to 43 in terms of looking at 83% weekly readership. Again, sort of tending to the digital format as well as the paper itself. And if they're getting that information, do they trust it? And still, News Media Canada runs a survey every year or every few years, and there's again finding that content is still trusted from the news media in a comparison to other mediums across the board, and particularly editorial content being the most trusted content that's received from those sites. And in terms of online video consumption, I think there definitely be a lot of stats to support that people are streaming their content online and sort of moving away maybe from traditional formats. I'll have another slide there shortly just to show you who is actually looking at TV in a traditional format. But what I thought was interesting is that people, 38%, will actually seek out content that they can watch together, and then that number actually climbs in terms of parents, and looking at 44% of parents that are looking for content that they can watch with their family members. And to keep up to date with online video consumption, Vivid Data, in addition to ComScore that we use for MRP, is again a newsletter that you can subscribe to that will update you on these numbers. And traditional and television viewing. So definitely a change in behavior. But my caution when we're talking about reaching all Canadians is understanding the various segments and what they're still doing. And we particularly find when we're receiving content to distribute that people are not necessarily taking the opportunity to address those that are 50 plus or 65 plus. And so understanding that Canadian 65 plus are the ones that are still accessing TV is important. And looking at why they're actually using TV, it is actually for news and sports content, and the majority of viewership coming from Ontario and Quebec, where linear TV is meaning traditional broadcast. And that was a stat that was found earlier this year to support that. And so while sometimes we have webinars on an ongoing basis to talk about actually how to frame your content, and sometimes even addressing those demographics, and you'll see shortly that it's one of the still the top requested areas for us to send out content is for 50 plus, is even in the images. That the media are telling us that they're not getting the content that addresses that topic. And it's understandable because there's quite a few people in the population, with the average Canadian being 42, according to the latest census. And when it comes to another great organization is the Canadian Radio Television Commission that looks at broadcast. And so looking at the variety of news sources. And again, this goes to looking at those segments of demographics and the fact that they're all accessing news directly, just in different ways. And so again, leaning to a younger demographic, the magenta, the pink is more of a lean towards online. Whereas you can see that TV is more prevalent when it comes to the older demographic. Still online is quite on par for 65 plus, with radio also very prevalent across all the demographics. And for us, for radio, I think one of the challenges when the pandemic hit was this idea that people weren't in their cars and weren't necessarily listening to the radio. And what we've seen now is that actually people adapted and have continued to listen to the radio, but also having both streaming their sites as well as listening and tuning in. And so this next slide from the CRTC, when they did their survey in 2023, found that Canadians 18 plus in general, it's kind of on par, both the radio traditional listenership with streaming. And then the other bar graphs are how people identify themselves in that survey as Anglophone, Francophone, racialized, or Indigenous. And so again, between each group, you can see there might be a difference in how they access the information. And here's a little bit of highlights from our own media survey. And so within that network of 3,000, we're currently running the survey with all of our users. We've already had quite a large response from our major users, be it Post Media, Metroland, Village Media, to bloggers, and some of the smaller community papers, and a good representation of the variety of languages that we get pickup in. And from those results, we still see predominant request coming into 2025 for content that addresses the 55 plus seniors community. And what they've told us about that, and on the right-hand side, I've given you examples of how we're featuring seniors content, is the health, retirement, angles are important for sure, but what the message has been and continues to be is that people 50 plus live very healthy and diverse lives. And so as you can see here, like travel tips for seniors or grandparents enjoying time themselves or with their grandchildren. And so having a variety of types of content that may or may not come out in the actual article, but sometimes it is actually even the images. So generally when we're looking for content, there can be more than one image, so we can appeal to a variety of different type of publications, and it can be simply having a more diverse set of representation in the imagery that then satisfies what the editors are looking for to visually represent their readership. And something that we've seen just a little bit of change is probably health and safety, and family and community have risen up. So has environment and climate change. Generally, all the topics, we can find different ways to integrate them. Just some tend to have a little more of priority, and it's interesting to see year to year how that changes. And again, if you go onto our site, we have other webinars on to how to address, particularly when it comes to corporate communications type of messaging in a lifestyle context. We've worked those kind of messages into more lifestyle pieces, like talking about preparing lunches with sustainable, environmental friendly options, and happy to tailor those to give you examples on to how to tap into these requested topics if they don't readily come to mind as to how you might be able to address them. The other change, if you've worked with us in the past, is we would have been known as the evergreen content provider, and we found more and more that editors are looking for more specialized content. And so, again, we'll have a more up-to-date overview of these contents, but some early results are showing that, for example, Christmas was one of the peak periods there that jump on the left-hand side for content. But right across the board, New Year's, Canada Day, back to school, Remembrance Day, um, Valentine's Day, they're looking for content, and that has to do with filling the special sections or just feature sections within their papers. And we're also asking them, what type of awareness or theme focused information are you looking for? And again, not surprised that seniors' health is that peak there on the right hand side. And another peak we saw was mental health in terms of content that they're looking for. And understanding the content itself. So we were looking to understand if they don't use the content, what is it about it that prevents them from doing so? And the main reason that happens is how the brand is integrated into that. So we know that most clients that are, obviously doing these initiatives or doing outreach is to raise awareness about their brand or their client's brand. And so we're always evolving and finding better ways to do that. Again, we're not asking editors to pay for this content that's earned. And so they recognize what, again, communicators and PR people are trying to do. And it's just finding that right balance that it doesn't appear too advertorial like and still maintains that editorial quality for them. The other reason that they're using the content and just understanding the needs of their newsroom is really kind of comes into two buckets, which is limited resources or staff. And like that, also they need content, which kind of goes hand in hand, that they don't necessarily have the people on staff or the ability to create content, and particularly last minute content if something falls through in order to fill that gap. Okay, and just to finish off, I just wanted to give you an example of what is content, what does the process look for us in partnership with yourself and if you're an agency or clients. And because I mentioned at the very beginning, we have benchmark guarantees. We do a lot of due diligence at the very beginning to understand if our service is the right fit for what you're looking to achieve with your budget and your time parameters. And so from that discussion, if those things all line up, then we go through what's known as the briefing process, which is to understand, again, more specific audience timing, what the capabilities are, what's the actual needs for the message going out. And then once we understand that, we create the content together, depending on what mediums have been chosen. My team, we write, we produce videos, we do radio spots, and once those are all approved by you or the client, then they are distributed to our network. Again, we adapt the content if it's a US and Canada market just to address the different, obviously, spelling and stylistic needs, as well as informing on different topics that might resonate with each market. And then we monitor and report. We have an in-house monitoring team for all of the mediums that we then have the clips that we enter into MRP so that not only we can report back to you on the results, but to know if we have to course correct. Sometimes there's things that we can't anticipate that come up in the media, and we just, particularly around the pandemic and COVID-19, just using those phrases, that was probably the biggest example for us, that one week that worked, the next week it didn't. And so we work in partnership to see if we need to adapt things to get the pickup that, we're looking for. And as an example of what that would look like, I particularly like the example of CropLife because they're trying to raise awareness, don't necessarily have a product or service, but in the industry, they, again, quite often we have clients that come to us that are just trying to raise awareness and to myth bust. And in this case, it was about urban pesticides, and they wanted to reach out to Canadians in English and French to raise awareness about this topic, to seek more information. And when we see something like that, again, just determining what method might work well. If it is possible to do multimedia, particularly with Canada, I find that when I see results, if you just think about access to information, that radio reaches in different places than a physical paper does. We know that online access to good internet might differ between different parts of the country. So where possible, if you can reach people with the same message in different ways, you're going to have a greater amount of impact. And so what we do is we create assets basically that can be used by media or any source that's looking for information to plop it into their publication or their newsletter. And so here's an example. What I like about this one too is that it's not branded. A lot of the time, most of our coverage does include a CTA call to action or a brand message, but we see a lot of government relation initiatives. We see a lot of thought leadership that comes through where people just want to raise awareness about a topic, and in some cases maybe talk to their MP or talk to their doctor to learn more information about that. So these are two examples that were distributed that were unbranded, and then another two that where we were able to strategically include some information about the organization, as well as in this case someone within the organization, because we're looking to do stakeholder awareness, build the brand and reputation, as well as thought leadership. And so we adapt that content into different mediums. In this case, the same message is repurposed into a radio spot that's 60 seconds, where with a call to action on where to learn more about the information. And then we adapt that into a video format. We do a variety of videos in-house, but sometimes it's just simple. In this case, this video I've given a link to was used with stock footage. And we do try to include video as much as possible because MSN itself prioritizes that. We have a larger network, but the reach on MSN is quite significant at almost 1 million reach. And we also get the views for the video that's done by MSN, so it's all organic. And if you were to go to the site, you can see they prioritize the videos on the homepage. And then if it's appropriate, we actually have amplification packages for each asset. Interestingly enough, actually, we are still able to distribute that content on Facebook. We haven't been blocked, so we're able to share out information from our For Your Life page for clients, and then depending on Google search as well as Instagram or Pinterest. So that if an objective of you is not just to raise awareness, but to actually get people seeing your website or information and driving specific traffic, then we're able to do that as well as share results in a more granular way. And that's an interesting change, I think, in the industry where there is sort of awareness tactics and how many people read the Toronto Star. And then we've been finding ways basically to also complement that with the more granular. We know that now teams are not just the communications, there's a combined role with digital and marketing. And so we're evolving to be able to provide that kind of metrics for you. And then finally, a question we get too is just the sample type of pickup that we get. And again, these are MRP numbers for those that are the larger entities. We have an in-house team that researchers, I should say, emerging media. And so that's a sample of the different stations that we get in Canada. And then in the US, it is primarily online and in print coverage that we have in very different numbers. To Canada, it's a much bigger opportunity. And so that's a sampling of the pickup that we have there. And that brings me just to almost 30 minutes. If you have any questions that you'd like to, I see people have maybe typed in here, you can actually unmute yourself if that's easier. You can just click on your name, I think in where it appears, and you can right click and unmute yourself if there's any questions that people have.
You do have a question in the chat, Victoria, just in regards to trust media, if we have stats on the trust, which I know you did have on your slide. I'm not sure if we've fully answered Genevieve's question though.
Yeah, what I could do in the follow-up, Genevieve, is I can go into, I think it was News Media Canada that had a lot of insights into trust, so we can follow up with a direct link to where all those stats are in further detail. This is also recorded, and I will be sending on the deck too. So there's a number of sources, especially with all the stats that I recommend, and then I'll send a list of all the publications in Canada that produce newsletters that I would recommend following. I feel we get a lot of information from the States that it's not necessarily the same of what's actually going on in Canada. So it's great where possible to get Canadian specific results. And I should say conversely is if you do have questions about the US, please reach out to me and I can give you a different overview of what the opportunity looks like and the trends in the US. Well, if there are not any further questions, I'll have my contact information in the follow-up email. I appreciate you guys taking the time over your lunch hour to attend the webinar, and look forward to working with you in the new year. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.